And here we are. Good morning, everybody. My name is Dave Fanale, and this is Real Estate Skill Builder. I'm sorry, Real Estate Talk. I forgot what I was doing there for a second. Real Estate Talk, TGIF number 251, 251 episodes in 248 straight weeks. We're real excited about those numbers because we just keep going. I'm addicted to this, and we keep having great people on, such as Alexa Rosario today, who I recently figured out and found out who she was and what she did and how she did. And I was so excited about it. Then I found out she knew a lot of people that I know. So we just got on here. And I love the way she describes herself as being ridiculously, obnoxiously passionate about what she does, which is really cool. Good morning, Alexa.
Hi, good morning. Thank you so much for having me. So this has been so awesome. We connected over another podcast that I did, and it was so awesome to actually get to have a conversation with you and kind of learn about you and your journey, and to even, consistency, I know something that most people struggle with. So the fact that you've done this for 251 episodes, and you said 248 of them straight?
8 weeks in a row.
That deserves a round of applause. That's amazing.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Well, we're going to get started, but we've got to get going with this intro first because I like it. So here we go. We'll be right back. Real estate agents, are you looking to acquire clients consistently to grow your business and income for a great lifestyle? Well, this is Dave Fanale, and I'm here to bring you the Real Estate Skill Builder broadcast, Real Estate Talk TGIF, brought to you by Real Estate Skill Builder and the Modern Agent team. Good morning, everybody. Again, this is Real Estate Talk, TGIF. Of course, I am not in my studio. Obviously, you might see I'm somewhere else. I actually am just miles away from Alexa. Yep. We are in South Florida, and I want to thank you again for coming on. And before we get started, Alexa, there is a question I have to ask you that I ask everybody in the broadcast. And if you've done your homework, you'll know the answer. And if you haven't, well, that's okay because not many people get it right anyway. The question is, what does TGIF stand for?
Oh man, I know the typical one is thank God it's Friday, but is there a different meaning for it?
Well, you know what? If you had done your homework, you would have the answer to that, Alexa. You know what? I want to tell you that. I want to thank you for being on. So it is, thank God, it's finale. I mean, how could you get that?
Love it. Right? Love
so
it.
This is where we're at, and we are starting here. So Alexa, you've been in real estate a while. You've found to have some really great things to come on and to work with. And I'm really excited to hear what you have to say. But first, there's always something about, where you came from. And I ask everybody the same question to start a broadcast is, how did you start? I mean, how did you get from where you were getting into the business or before the business and then into where you are today, being this badass person helping agents and clients like crazy? How did you get there?
Thank you. So it's interesting because I think how we get into the business defines our career, or the way that we use our story defines our career. So when I started, I was actually in college selling real estate, and I, interestingly enough, never actually finished my degree because I started doing really well in real estate and didn't want to go more into student debt. And so just kind of took it and ran with it. In my first couple of years, I worked with a ton of student renters, and then I worked with first-time buyers, and then my price point just kept continuing to increase. And so over the last couple of years, we've really found that being systematic, regardless of your personality style, has been the most important kind of focus that you can have in your business. And the way that I came to that sort of realization was a couple of years ago, my dad passed away. He was an entrepreneur himself, and he was a union guy. So he's very blue collar, not systematic at all, but he cared about people. He loved what he did. He was super passionate, and he was a legend in South Florida in the kitchen and granite and quartz fabrication space. And in running a business, he ended up buying the company from his previous boss. They were doing 2 or 3 kitchens a week, and he grew it within a span of 5 years to 20 kitchens a day. And so I learned so much from him in terms of how to take care of people and really how to run a business, how to build loyalty with the people in your world. And I also realized that the stress-induced heart attack that took his life at 51 was the thing that I think taught me more than anything. And that was that regardless of your personality style, regardless of whether you have the time or want to systemize your business or not, if you don't, it will cost you your life. And then a couple of months after he passed away, my stepmom took over his business and ran it from a multi-million-dollar business to zero in a span of 4 months. And so not having systems not only cost him his life, but it also cost him his legacy, because he didn't have systems and his business was entirely operated around him. And so a lot of agents I talk to are like, well, I'm not really like a systems person. I'm not tech savvy. And I would argue that not being tech savvy is not, it's not a personality trait. It's a skill, right? It's a skill deficiency, if you will. And by focusing on building that out, we got really just intentional about being systematic. And through that journey, we then started helping other agents build the same systems in their businesses. And so it's really been an interesting journey, because I think we take a different approach to the business. And so that has been awesome.
So knowing all the entrepreneurship that you've seen, and you've had an example with your dad, and it's something that we have in common, basically, because you saw that in your dad. And I actually worked with my dad for 25 years. And while we always didn't get along, I always saw the work ethic, right? I mean, I'm sure that could happen with you too, right? So, we saw the work ethic, we saw everything else. And then, he had massive growth. And then as time went on, you needed to figure this out yourself, because you didn't want to end up like that. So talk to me about the struggles that you started with, and where the light bulb went off in your head.
Yeah, so I think what I find to be very interesting, and I'm pretty sure that I'm not the only person that feels this way, is it's still to this day, I struggle with being in relationship and sales mode, and then being in systems mode. So it's like I have to turn off the admin side of my brain to turn on my salesperson, and then other times I have to turn off the salesperson to turn on my admin brain. And so that has been a very interesting kind of dynamic of literally having to balance the two kind of sides of my brain. So, and I think that really becomes the hardest challenge for agents, is most people don't want to take that time. But if you really look at it as what I call a slingshot, which is you pull back a little bit, you take a few steps back so that you can slingshot ahead. That is how we end up with these massive kind of changes in our businesses. And I remember going to a training a couple of years ago that had the hockey stick, right? And they said a systematic agent may take longer to win, but they will always win in the end, because they're going to grow a business that's scalable, sustainable, systematic. They can incorporate leverage into their business. And that has always kind of stuck with me. And that's been something that has driven kind of, even when I'm like, okay, I don't want to have to do this, right? It focuses it as a priority.
Right. So one of the things I say, when you say hockey stick, I think of the J curve, and it's really kind of similar, right? So the hockey stick is that up, right? And a lot of times what happens is when people start, when they don't commit to something, they start not seeing the results. Because let's face it, that's why everybody wants now leads, because they want instant gratification, and they don't understand that. I know work is a 4-letter word, but you still have to do it to get there. And people may quit too quickly and not see that their hard work is going to get themselves. Look, there are people out there in the industry, and I'll use one guy as example, Ryan Stewman, who said, you know who Ryan is? Ryan said that, he did blogs for 8 years and podcasts for 8 years, and no one heard of him. All of a sudden, one day, it took off. And, Ryan is one of the most well-known people in the mortgage and training industry, as well as, one of the highest paid as well. So, I mean, that's not really where I'm going with the money, but it's all about, the persistence and the consistency, right? So when you started thinking about building systems, and we'll talk about this as how far it goes for agents, because this broadcast is all about giving something to agents and giving them value. So let's talk about, what was the first thing that you had to figure out?
So I honestly, the way that I really approach any form of system is like, what is the thing I like to do the least, and how can I do less of it, right? Like, because as like when we talk about the disc, I'm really passionate about the fact that it doesn't matter what your personality style is. You should love systems. So if you're familiar with the disc, like your D or your driver personality is very like direct and to the point. They can be kind of abrasive. Right. They're super just focused on the result. to me, my if you look at my disc, my D and my I actually almost break the disc profile. And so for my D personalities, you'll love systems if you embrace them because you never have to repeat yourself and it helps you get to the result faster. If
Right.
you're the I personality, you're expressive, natural born salesperson, life of the party. You're going to find that it allows you to focus more time on the relationship and less time on the administrative work in the back end. For my S personalities, it allows you to relax in the situation and focus on being present and not having to worry about the 80 other things going on in the back end. And for my analyticals, which everybody thinks that only analyticals can be, systems oriented, it allows you to make sure that you're never going to miss a step. And so I think step one is we have to look at, okay, well, let's get out of the mindset that just because you're a D or just because you're an I doesn't mean that you can't be systematic. Like that is, I think, one of the greatest disservices we do as an industry when we categorize agents in these 4 categories and say, you're a systems person and you're not a systems person. So I do want to start there. The second piece of it is then to look at what is the part of the business that you hate doing the most. Now, understand that systemizing or leveraging lead generation is not going to be the first, granted, you may not love it, but that cannot be the first thing that you systemize or leverage, because if you do that, then your conversion rates are just going to drop through the floor. You still have to be, that should really be the last thing that you leverage. But for myself, I hate showing properties. I know that as a realtor, we're supposed to be oh, we love pretty houses. I really don't enjoy showing property. And I don't enjoy scheduling showings. And so when I started this whole journey of systemizing my business, it became, okay, well, how do I make sure that I never have to show a property again? And so before we even brought in a showing agent, we really focused on building out the administrative side of the business. And through that, it became, okay, well, if we're going to do this, we need to make sure that I can get the information from my client over to our admin as quickly as possible. And that's how we started building out our client funnels. And then from there, it became, okay, well, now that we have all this information, we understand, when the buyer wants to go looking at property, we understand all the information that has to go into the MLS for a seller. Now we can hand it over to our VA, who can then schedule the showings for our showing agent. And that way we these little 1% improvements over time helps me build a business where now I don't really have to show property. I'm really just focused on finding the business, securing the business through consultations, and negotiating the contracts.
Yeah, and let's understand that you're finding the business, not your VA. And I always wanted to bring that up because a lot of people, yes, a lot of newer agents, a lot of agents in the business for a few years. Well, now I need someone to make the phone calls for me. I'm sorry, folks. No matter what we're talking about here, that really is not possible. I mean, yeah, it is in some places, in some areas, but not here. Not with what we're trying to do and trying to build with whatever kind of people we're trying to work with. Now, when we look at building the systems, you built systems, and you built systems basically around what you were doing at the time, life, right? That's one of the things we talked about the other day was you built the systems around life. How does that affect how did that affect you, and what should that affect everybody else?
So when we say I built it around life, I think that goes back to what I said before about focusing on, I don't remember where I heard this, and I always like to give credit where when I learned something, where I learned it, and right, for the life of me, I cannot remember where I learned it. But we talk about burnout as the fastest recipe for burnout is doing the same thing repetitively without any form of growth or any form of contribution. So when things like scheduling showings, to me, is a recipe for burnout because it's not something that's going to grow me, and it's not something that's really focused on the highest level activity where I'm able to give and be face to face with my clients. So that was something that I really was I don't want to do this anymore. And right, so I also find that I don't consider myself a lazy person, but I also know that when it comes to, if I have 10 things to do and there's one thing I really hate doing, I will figure out a way to make sure that ends up being the last thing to do. So I was finding all these little things that I was procrastinating, and I'm this doesn't, it's not hard to do. It's just, I don't want to do it. So I don't have to be the one to do it. And so we really focused on not what do I have to do? It became, what is the best way to do it? And what is the best way to do it so that I don't have to do it? And that's the question I kind of asked myself in everything. And I think That's kind of the best way I can answer that question as well.
Right. So what you said earlier is, how can I do less of what I hate to do? So one of the things that we've always talked about with a mutual friend of ours, Grant Wise, we talked about, how do you fire yourself from different things
Yes.
that you don't like to do? So you need to do that one at a time. So as you had a list of 10 things, and the thing you hated to do was always the last thing that you did.
Yes.
When in reality, and tell me what you think about this. In reality, that one thing that you hated to do really didn't take you a lot of time, and it really wasn't that hard. 9 times out of 10, right?
Yes, 100%.
So it's really important to look at what you have to do, and just like, sometimes we just got to bite the bullet and do what we don't want to do, and then start as we move along. As you built the systems, you can actually start firing yourself from the things you hate to do. When we look at how to grow your business, I mean, I think that's the most important thing. What are you really good at, or what do you really love doing, right? And one of the things that a lot of people don't see is, when they start in this business, they're told, learn this, or go follow somebody, learn these scripts, yada, yada, yada. How about do what you're really good at? And they say, well, what is that? Talking to people, being a real human being. And that's what your systems are allowing you to do, because you're getting the kind of bullshit stuff out of the way, that where you can really focus on being a human being. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. And just to add on to that, so I think it's important to think about, like, I'm realizing more and more that I am on this mission to sort of change the way that we look at real estate as a business. So in like the old school model, it was like the agent does everything. But if we look at every other profession, we look at our attorneys, we look at our doctors, we look at all these other kind of professions. Even when you go to the mechanic, like generally, if you go to a fairly decent mechanic shop, they have somebody at the front desk who is like doing the check-ins, they're doing the billing, they're doing the credit card processing, and then you have the actual mechanic in the background doing the part that they're the best at, and no one else can really replace that until they train an apprentice who then takes over and plays a role in that. When you go to the doctor's office, that you have, my dog is over here like trying to be in camera. When you go to the doctor's office, you have the receptionist at the front desk, and then you go see the nurse, and they take your blood pressure and they weigh you on the scale and they do all the other stuff. The doctor comes in, does their 5 minutes, they do their highest and best activity, and they're like, okay, here's your prescription, or here's your blood work, and they send you on your way, and you go back out to the receptionist. And so like we have this mindset of thinking that we can only be the one to do everything, but our clients are used to dealing with practices where there's multiple people involved in a situation. And I think that is by and far, if we can adopt that mindset, all of a sudden this whole world of possibility opens up. And it's just about how you frame it to the client, where it's not just like, oh, I'm too busy, like I don't have time for this. It's, here's how this experience benefits you. And that, I mean, that alone will change the way that we do business as a whole.
You just said the magic words. It's all how we frame it to the customer. It's all how we frame it really in our own minds as well. So, when we talk about, when I mentioned earlier about, getting now business and getting business and doing the work, I mean, the best thing in my opinion, is when an agent starts, is to start making the calls and make as many mistakes as possible. And then they have systems to fall back on. But the thing is that everything we look at, as you just said, is a system. When you go into a doctor's office, hey, let's throw in another word that people hate: scripts. When you go into that doctor's office, everything is a script. When you walk up to the front desk, when the nurse takes your blood pressure, when the doctor comes in, it's all a script. They're all saying the same thing, and that's their process. Yeah. It's our process too. It's just to put it along with doctors' terms, is what is our bedside manner? How good are we at relating to the people that we're working with? And I believe that is the number one problem in failure in the real estate business, with agents not being able to have a bedside manner, because they're worrying too much about what they're going to say and what they got to do rather than just doing it.
Oh, without a question. I think that is a super important mindset too. And even looking at, like, we look at a law practice, right? You start as like an associate attorney, and generally you're helping the lead attorneys. And then when you get promoted to partner, that is when you can actually start bringing in your own business. Like, so nothing that we're talking about is revolutionary here. This is all stuff that every other profession does, that treats it like a business and runs it like a practice, rather than the real estate agent who thinks that our egos are so big that we have to be the one to do everything.
Right.
But if you focus on, my job is to generate business for the business, and my team's job is to run the day to day so that I can focus on the things that require my name, my face, my voice, and my signature. If it doesn't require those three things, I don't have to be the one who's doing it. And so and by the way, like, I'm not a cold caller. So I think it's important to like clarify that when we're talking about generating business, that doesn't necessarily mean the person hammering away at the phones. But for me, that means building the relationships to get those referrals with my strategic alliances, with agents around the country, creating content. Like, those are the things that are my highest and best use of my time. Doing the follow-ups, doing the consultation. It goes off to my team, which, by the way, is an important distinction, because a lot of times we look at the contract to close as a transaction coordinator and like, okay, I have leverage. Well, you do, but you're going to hit another ceiling where you cannot continue to grow if you only have the transaction coordinator. The next piece that you have to leverage is the consult to the contract, which is what I've been talking about with the showings and the coordinating of prepping the listing on the MLS, meeting the photographer, putting up the sign, like getting the lockbox on the property. That's all the consult to the contract. So now we've taken off the contract to close. We've now leveraged and systemized the consult to the contract. Now it really becomes from the content, whatever that means for you, if that's open houses, if that's social media content, if that's mailers, if that's cold call, whatever it is, from the content all the way to the consult. And that's where I think the agent of the future really thrives.
So in other words, we're talking about let's see, we got the transaction coordinator, which is from contract to closing.
Yeah.
And you're talking about the
consult to the contract.
The consult to the contract, which is more like the preliminary of getting the information and putting all the information together as to what the desires, needs, and wants and everything of the customer.
Absolutely.
And it comes as a system, and it makes it easier for a lot of agents to be able to build a business with doing things that they really love to do.
Yes.
So follow me here, right? So again, my friend Grant, I watched him do a presentation once, and one of the things that he said was, you cannot judge a fish by their ability to climb a tree.
Absolutely.
So basically what that means in the real estate world is that a lot of agents get in this business to sell homes, to show homes, to do all these things. And when there's all the other stuff that's involved, it really disillusions them as to what they really want to do in this business, because they didn't get in this business to do something. What you've created and what you've built out of your own desires was, you've taken the stuff that a lot of agents really, I mean, they love talking, but it's all the paperwork and all the stuff, getting it all together. You've coupled the consult all the way to the closing.
Yes.
And the personality is you.
Definitely. And so to add on to that, like going along this whole practice approach. So my showing agent was a brand new agent when I met her, and I saw the hustle, I saw the grit, and I saw her ability to connect with people in a way that she, like, again, I don't enjoy the showings. I don't enjoy going to put on a lockbox at a property, but for a new agent, that's what they love to do, because it feels like motion. So it's almost like this sort of model has shifted from just the agent to now being like, I'm the lead agent in my business. And then I have an apprentice agent, where she has learned more working with me than she ever would have on her own, simply because she's able to tap into kind of the deal, if you will. She's in the actual kind of day-to-day of what's going on in the transaction, and she loves it. So one of the things I recommend when you're bringing a showing agent into your business is that showing agent needs to feel like grandma. And I know that sounds like a weird kind of analogy, but when you're handing your client off to your showing agent, they need to feel like they walk into a house and that person, their personality feels like a hug from grandma. It smells like cookies, and it's just a warm, genuine, sincere kind of relationship. And that's how you really kind of thrive through this sort of this model. You can't have a driver who's your showing agent, because it's just going to be they're going to end up pushing away the client rather than building those bridges. So I don't know if that makes sense, but I think that's a really important thing to clarify.
So you've thrown in a lot of things with the DISC analysis, right? And I want to ask you a quick question on that.
Yeah.
How important is the DISC analysis when working with other people or working with clients or hiring a showing agent? How important is that to you, and how important do you think it should be in our business?
I think it's only like a quarter, maybe a third of it, but it is an important part. So like, we can't just look at the DISC and say, oh, well, you fit this role, so you're going to be great. It's not that. It's like, let's factor that in, but we also need to look at the person's intelligence. I think is an important one, because you can be the dumbest driver in the world, or you can be the dumbest analytical, you can be the dumbest of anything. And even though you check the box, if you're not actually intelligent, I think that is something that we forget. And then the third part of that is the emotional intelligence. So you can be the smartest, but if you have no emotional intelligence, then it's not going to matter. So it's the DISC, the intelligence, the emotional intelligence, and then I think the last part of it is making sure that they align with your core values, whatever those look like for you. And if you can find the person who checks all four of those boxes, then you have the right person. I would actually add a fifth one, is they also need to get, so I read this book called Traction, which I highly recommend. It was one of my favorite books that I've read in a long time. And so they talk about GWC. The person in a role needs to get it, they need to want it, and they need to have the capacity for it. And I don't know if that's a separate one or if that kind of can be displayed across the other four. But I think without having all of those, there's a really good chance that person's not going to be the right fit for that role.
I think the book Traction that you just mentioned is a great book for anybody who's looking to either start a team, be on a team, or to be in some kind of management, because they'll understand the way the process should be. It's a great book. The other book that would go along with that would be Rocket Fuel.
Yes, absolutely.
By the same author, which is really good. So I want to talk really quickly about something, not quickly, but something about that's really important, which is you talked about your showing agent and the grit and the hustle. Okay. Now I want to tell you about an experience that I have. One of the things that I do very often, I do it every day, is I engage with my perfect client avatar. And if people don't know what that is, that's my perfect client. I have listed out who they are, what they look like, where they shop. I have taken all those that pieces of information, put it together, and that's who I engage with.
Yes.
A lot of people think engagement on social media is that they post something and they wait for somebody to comment, like, or follow, which is not what engagement is. Engagement is when you go after it yourself and you start the engagement. And one of the things this week, it was really interesting that I had several responses when I asked about engagement. They said, well, you know what? One person specifically said, well, what I learned, 6 months ago is that I need to work more hours, and I need to work 7 days a week. So I need to work 12 to 16 hours a day and 7 days a week. And one of the things that we talked about the other day on a conversation we had was that you specifically said you've got to stop glorifying the hustle, right? I want you to talk about that, because I believe that a lot of people talk about the hustle. And first of all, they don't hustle. They don't have the grit. They just
have a whole bunch of stuff going on. So
they just want to talk about it because it's cool and it's a great place to put it on social. Talk about not glorifying the hustle.
Yeah. So I remember, and again, like I always try to like acknowledge who I learned something from. And this one, I don't remember where I learned it either, but it must've been like a video or something I read or watched somewhere. And they said, if you look at a restaurant, you're going to find that the hardest working person is the least paid person. So like, they were like, arguably the most or the hardest working person is usually like the busboy. They're like running around like a crazy person, but they get paid pennies on the dollar. And then you look at the next level, which would be like your waiter. They work their butts off. Like they work really, really, really hard. And they get paid okay, but they're still working way harder than your assistant manager or your general manager. And I think there's this trade-off between your manual labor and your skill set. And the more you raise up your skill set, the less manual labor you have to do, because your value now becomes your intellectual property, the way that your brain works. And there is a lot of science that shows that our brains are incapable not just unwilling, not just doesn't like to. We legitimately cannot be creative in a stressed state. And so you'll find like a lot of the greatest innovative companies in the world, they spend most of their time focused on like one thing, and that's just being the visionary, being creative, and they don't focus on all the other stuff because it takes away from their highest and best use of their brain energy. And so is there like this does not replace hard work. I think it just changes it, because for someone who is the visionary, someone who really is using their intellectual property as their value, for someone who creates a lot of content, like I'm sure that you would agree that you're exhausted when you're doing a ton of content. Yes. You're exhausted when you're engaging with a lot of people. You're exhausted when you're putting a presentation together or doing something along those lines. You're exhausted when you're putting yourself out there and staying in a state of discomfort. It's just different. And so I think the hustle mindset in the traditional sense is it truly, honestly, if anything, glorifies the poverty mindset. It doesn't glorify a mindset of abundance. It truly is like, what do I need to do? 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 And it encourages anxiety rather than saying, what is the best use of my time right now? And forgetting about everything else and focusing on like the who rather than the what for all the other stuff.
Yeah, it's not a matter of, and we used the phrase work ethic earlier in our conversation here.
Yeah.
And I don't think it has anything to do with work ethic. I mean, it doesn't have anything to do with hard work either. I mean, it's like you said earlier, you said this week, hard work equals work ethic. Right?
Yes, it does.
And when we talk about hustle, yeah, you're going to hustle, and you're going to, in the beginning, look, I tell agents all the time, new agents, look, you've got to really put in the hard work now. So as you build your business over the next few years, you can figure out, okay, do I want to scale? Do I want to be independent? Do I want to be individual? Do I want to have a team? Do I want to even, I mean, God forbid, own a brokerage. Why would anybody want that? But that's beside the point. It's and what you said earlier, and I need to keep quoting you, it's an intentional effort to work smarter is what you have done with the systems you have built. Yeah. So as we move along in everything you've done, and I want people to know that I have firsthand experience with you and your team, and the service and the way the consultative approach has worked has been phenomenal. I actually absolutely love it.
Thank you.
We're now in the end of the third month of the year. This is being broadcast on March 31st, 2023. So the first quarter is over as of today. So,
which is crazy how fast time is going.
Exactly. And as you get older, believe me, it goes faster. So I can tell you that. So, but the reason I bring that up, Alexa, is that I look at 3 months and I say, okay, there's a lot of people that set out goals. The smarter people set out plans to reach those goals, and the smartest people set out plans with action steps to reach those goals.
Yeah.
So we're 3 months into the year, there's 9 to go. What would you say to an agent that says, shit, I didn't get anywhere yet? What would you say to that agent?
So when I set goals, and this is going to sound like I said, nothing I'm saying is revolutionary. I think I've just looked at what works in other industries, and I've looked at what has worked for other people. And I'm like, how does that apply for like the solo agent or the highly leveraged solo agent, as I would call it? And so looking at like, what is the goal for the year? And then from there, breaking it down by the quarters, and then to your point, taking it from the quarters to then down to the day. And so, and I think one of the things that a lot of the goal setting I've seen has failed at is they go from the quarter to the day. And that's not good enough, because we can't just say, okay, my goal is this amount of production for the quarter, and that means I need to make 20 contacts a day, whatever that is. Our brains are not wired to stay in that state of discomfort for that long of a future goal. But if you say, my goal for this week, for this entire week, is I need to do a consultation. I need to go on a listing. And it doesn't matter how you get there, but that is the goal. And nothing else is more important than that one thing. There is nothing that gets in the way of that one thing. And so we look at we have like 3 goals for the year, and then we have 4 4 different rocks within 4 different rock categories within those goals. And then so we're looking at each quarter, we have 4 main goals that we're trying to accomplish for the quarter. And then we then break that down into a weekly activity. And so keeping in mind that like I'm a highly leveraged solo agent, so it's not just me and my business. If I was solo, it would just be like, what is the one thing? What is my one thing for this quarter? What is my one thing for this week? What is my one thing for this day? And I remember hearing somewhere, there's something called the 15th of the month protocol, which is if, let's say, for example, your goal is to go on 4 listing appointments for the month, and we're on the 15th and you've only done 1 and you still have 1 to go, then on the 15th of the month, then you go, oh shit, we have to buckle down and do the 15th of the month protocol. And so they end up tripling their contacts for the rest of until they've reached or gotten back on track for their goal. They, and I forget, there's like 3 or 4 other things that they end up doing that align with their lead generation sources, but they triple down on their activity in order to get back on track for the goal, because moving the goal is not an option. It's just moving the activities so that you can actually perform that. So I hope that that kind of helps.
Oh, it really does. It really does, because basically what it's saying is, you know what? If you haven't done it yet, you need to start now, right? Yeah. And look, the first month is gone. Anybody can tell you that this year and last year and everything else was, you know, who knows what's going on, because there's a lot of people. The only people that really get this are ones that started back in 2009, 10, 11, and 12. To be very honest with you, I get it because I've been through several of the different changes that we've been through. None of us have ever been through a pandemic. So, you know, we don't know how we're coming out of it. We don't know where it's going. So you started building these systems during that time. And I would like you to talk about, you know, automate with Alexa. Talk to me about what that is all about, because I want you to really get in and explain to it. We talked about systems. We talked about this. Now I want you to go into the nitty gritty and tell people exactly how your system can help them grow their business.
Yeah, totally. So I actually, this automate with Alexa page, I recently started because I was finding, to your point earlier about like your perfect client avatar, the system side of my business was growing and my real estate business was growing. And I was struggling to continue creating content for both of them in a way that didn't feel confusing for the consumer. And so I was like, you know what, I'm just going to start a second page. And so automate with Alexa, the Instagram and YouTube, still fairly new. We share just regular content on there to help you kind of grow your business. You're seeing my dog's face over here, so disregard.
Okay.
So in terms of actual kind of execution plans, we have systems 1, we have systems 2, and then we also have our products to help support those. So systems 1 is really focused on your agent, your solo agent who's in production. So this is not a good fit for like a brand new agent who has no pipeline yet. Like once you start getting busy, our systems 1 is our client funnels. And that really helps you with your onboarding flows. So we really focus on answering the questions of really 3 things. Number 1 is, can I trust you? And that really speaks to our social proof page. The second is, do you care about me? That's the intake form. So I know that you went through the intake form as well. And that really helps our team can share all the information very effectively so that the client feels like everything is on one page. It's not like, oh, I told Jessica this, but Shai doesn't know and Alexa doesn't know. It's like, no, we all are on the same page. And then the third piece of it is the experience page, which is like how are you going to help me get there? And so for the buyer is really focused on the buyer negotiation workshop. So think of it as kind of like a first-time buyer seminar, except we renamed it as the negotiation workshop because in the craziness of the pandemic, we were having clients who were like, I've bought property before. And so we would kind of shift that to, it doesn't matter if you've bought property before. If you haven't bought in this market, you haven't bought property before. And so instead of being in the chaos of the pandemic where I was feeling burnt out, that was when we built out our client funnels. And I started with buyers because they were the ones that were burning me out. And then as we started to see the shift in focus to listings, where we're now seeing a lot more listings coming on the market, then we went and created the seller version of that. Now, it's interesting because the mindset behind buyers and sellers is very different. So on the buyer side, we give them a lot more information. We're very, very detailed, very kind of like break it down step by step by step. Whereas with sellers, they are so impatient that, and they care more about where they're going than the house that they're selling. Like they're not excited to sell their house. They're excited to move to where they're going. And so on the seller side, instead of the workshop, we focus on the digital listing presentation. So in systems 1, we teach you kind of the scripting. We teach you how to roll that out. We give you the templates. We give you the website. We give you everything for that. In systems 2, again, so I'm very much a believer in once you reach a ceiling, you then have to grow. You then have to increase your systems. So systems 2 is for when that agent reaches a ceiling, systems 2 comes in, and that's where you start incorporating a showing agent and a virtual assistant into your business. So we give you like your standard operating procedures through all the tutorials. We give you the automations for follow-up boss, and we really just help you kind of make it easy to skip all of the trial and error of saying a showing agent doesn't work or a VA doesn't work. We give you like, here's exactly the templates for hiring your showing agent, hiring your VA. Here's exactly how to interview them. And we break it down into just insane amounts of detail to help you kind of get there. So it's been a really interesting and fun and incredible and fulfilling journey. We've helped about 1,500 agents to this point. And so we're just getting started.
This is really exciting because you're not only selling a system or have a system to talk about and system to grow with, you've got a system that actually, like, a lot of times there's pieces missing. It doesn't sound like you've missed many pieces here, right? So, and the great part about it is this is a system that can work really anywhere, and it's going to work for everyone. You said that you used the phrase highly leveraged solo agent. Yes. This is a system that can be used for you, who is a highly leveraged solo agent, and a team. Would you agree with that?
Oh, definitely. So it's interesting because I only teach to what I know. Like, I'm not going to sit here and be like, I'm an expert at something that I'm not. Like, I recently brought on Jessica, our buyer's agent. She has a ton of experience selling real estate, but she's new to my team. And so we're still building out what that looks like, incorporating other people into your business. And so going along those same lines of, like, when you reach a ceiling, it's then time to grow. It's then time to elevate your systems. I'm now going through the process of what that looks like to incorporate other agents into my business. And so once we figure out how to systemize, leverage, and maximize that, then we'll come out with a systems 3 that's like, okay, we now, like, you have a pipeline. We've taught you how to onboard and kind of streamline that process. We then taught you how to build out the consult to the contract piece of your business. Now let's incorporate other agents. And so it's these little baby steps that help agents go from, like, I'm just hustling to sling houses right now to, wow, I'm actually running a business.
Exactly. And that's what I think a lot of agents don't really see that until, and they listen to people like you and me and others say, this is a business. You got to run it like a business. Oh, it is a business. It is a business. No, it's not. And one of the things I see the mostly is time-wise and schedule and organization. What has been the difference for you, Alexa, when you started really implementing these systems? What is the difference in your life and your business and your income?
Oh my God, it's been so interesting. So last year I showed 7 properties. I was working basically half time because I was focused on growing the agent side of our business, and I sold 10 million. So that was, and I spent less time in my business than I ever have before. And so the fact that, like, is that 100 million? No, but that worked perfectly for my lifestyle. And right. I didn't have to work that hard. I just had to work really smart doing it that way. I had to manage my people really well. I had to make sure that I ran meetings really well. I had to make sure that I trained them really well. So it was all these tweaking the dials to make sure that we had that on the right track. This year, we're on track for 30 million. And again, haven't shown a property yet this year. I have not, other than going to listing appointments, gone to, like, meet a photographer, put on a lockbox, do any of that. I haven't gone to an inspection, an appraisal, a walkthrough, because our showing agent specializes in that. And she is incredible. She's better at it than I am because she loves to do it. And so I've really focused on running the business. And so that has been so liberating. And it allowed me to focus on, like, the KPIs, right? So instead of saying like, what do I feel like doing? It's what does the business need? And then from there, being able to make really great decisions around the business. And our clients have loved the experience as well, because now I'm able to focus on the higher level sort of conversations rather than, oh my God, I have to go and meet an appraiser at a property and I can't do anything because I'm in the car the whole day. So
yeah. So, I mean, what everybody who's watching this now or who will have watched this in replay needs to understand that we're talking to a person that is dialed in as to what they want, what she wants, and where she wants to take her business. A lot of people have trouble with this because they say things that they hear and it sounds good. I want to tell you that I admire what you've done and how you've done it, because, you know, no matter what size your business is, and as you say, you're a highly leveraged solo agent. You don't have a huge team. You have an assistant. You have a showing agent, et cetera, and you work together as one.
yeah.
And it's just amazing. It's made your life better. It's made your business better, which means it has made your income better. You know, this is such a great system, and this has been such a great broadcast. I want to ask you a couple of different questions before we finish today. What would be the number one thing you would tell agents that are either new? Well, there's three types of agents that I work with for the most part, but they're all the same, I find. New agents, stuck agents, and agents that are having trouble scaling. So what would be your best advice to those three types of people?
I remember hearing somewhere, again, I can't attribute who this was from. I think this was actually from Gary Keller, who said, if you're stuck under 10 million, you have an activities problem, meaning you're not talking to enough people and you're not doing your lead follow-up. If you're stuck at 30, if you're stuck below 30 million, you have a leverage problem. And if you're stuck below, I think it was 50 or 60 million, then you have no, I'm sorry. If you're stuck under 30, you have a systems problem. And if you're stuck below, like, I think it was 50 or 60 million, then you have a leverage problem. And so I always kind of keep that in mind. And that all three of those, having the leads and the activity, having the systems and having the leverage apply at every level, regardless of if you're a $5 million producer or a 20 million or 50 or 100 million. It's just bigger problems. And so focusing on looking at those three things. Are you doing enough of the activity? Are you talking to enough people? Are you following up? And do you have the skills to actually get the job done? If the answer is yes, then you probably have a systems problem. And if you've now systemized your business and you've systemized it to the point that it's boring and that you've removed all of the, oh my God, like, how do I handle the situation moments? Then you need leverage. And so then it becomes a leverage problem. I'm a big believer in not bringing leverage into your business until you systemize, because there's so much that you're going to learn through that becomes intuition for you. Like, there's certain things that I can do and in a split second that my VA is not going to understand how to do in just 2 seconds. So I have to be able to take what's in my brain, kind of digest it, and then be able to share it with her in a way that she's like, okay, I can understand this. I know how to do it. So I think that's the journey we have to look at: activity, systems, and then leverage.
Activity, system, and leverage. It was great because you just told everybody what they needed to do, and and honestly, I'm sure you'll agree, nothing is going to help them more than action, but doing it in the right way.
Right.
Okay.
But just to clarify, there is a point where activity will have diminishing returns if you don't have systems and leverage. So the activity is important, but if you're doing all the activities and you're finding that you're in a constant state of burnout, you're finding that you're letting leads fall through the cracks, then you have a systems problem. But it's not just about activities. The systems are important, but one doesn't replace the other. And I think that's where the activity is the working hard part. The systems and the leverage is the working smart part.
That's exactly what we're doing, what we do with our team, the Modern Agent team. And that's what the logo is you see there, is we talk about a framework that we build from. Everything is based on a framework. It's not only your framework for prospecting, it's your framework for follow-up. It's your framework for showing up and being intentional. And those are the things you need to build on. No matter what it is, just make sure it works. I want to thank you so much for being on the broadcast today.
Thank you for having me. This was awesome.
Oh, you're very welcome. And we've got your contact information on the screen at Automate with Alexa, which is Instagram, and then a way to set up a time to talk with you, which I believe goes to a calendar for time to set up to talk with you. That is fantastic. I have just two other things so we finish up today. One is a question I ask everybody that's on the broadcast at the end, and that is, Alexa, how can I help you with your business? How can I help you grow your business?
This was amazing. So I think you've already done that. Like you've been awesome. I think you're an incredible interviewer, and I'm just grateful that you had me here. So thank you.
Well, thank you so much. I do appreciate that. And last but not least, I always take credit for getting people on the broadcast, but I know it's only one thing that gets people on the broadcast, and that's because they find out that they're getting a hat.
Yep, it definitely is a hat.
I want to let you know, and I missed it last week, so I mean, we're going to get you this hat, and we want to thank you so much. Next week, ladies and gentlemen, we've got Jan Copeland, who is the CEO of Agent Academy, which is the only lifetime access coaching program for women realtors. She's going to be on, Coach Jan Copeland. She is an amazing woman. She's going to be on joining us to talk about how she helps women realtors grow their business. And again, Alexa, thank you so much. Please stick with me for a minute as we go off. We got a quick video, and then we'll see everybody next week with Jan. So let me just figure out how to do this, because I ain't that great at what I do, but you know what? Here we go.